Following Liverpool's loss at Watford last week, we looked at every Premier League club's longest unbeaten run. Well, this week we're going to do the opposite and look at how long each club has gone without a win in the top flight of English football, from the least to the most number of games. 20th Manchester United, 7 games. Bottom of the league, which is actually the best place to be, Manchester United had the shortest run of games without a Premier League victory and actually came in the inaugural season. Yes, back in 1992, the Red Devils played 7 consecutive games without picking up a win, starting with a 1-1 draw at Tottenham. After 5 draws, they would lose back-to-back games to Wimbledon and Aston Villa, but the run didn't really hinder them, as they still went on to win the league by 10 clear points. 19th Arsenal, 8 games. 1 game more than Manchester United, Arsenal have also had limited runs without a win, their longest being 8 games. And just like Manchester United, their run came in the Premier League's debut season. It was just a game longer and they lost a few more games. Arsenal lost 5 and drew 3 during the 8-game run, including a damaging loss to North London rivals Tottenham. And during the 8 games, they actually only scored 2 times. Despite winning a domestic double, Arsenal were poor in the league and ended their first Premier League season in 10th. 18th Bournemouth, 8 games. The Cherries also have a longest run without a Premier League win of 8 games, but they've not been in it since day dot. Bournemouth became a Premier League club in 2015, and since then they've got 4 runs of 8 games without a win. Their most recent 8-game spell without 3 points came in 2017, and interestingly coincides with their longest run without losing. On December 26th, West Ham and Bournemouth drew 3-3, their 8th game without a win, but it was actually the start of a 7-game run without defeat, their longest in Premier League history. How mad. 17th Brighton, 9 games. Like Bournemouth, Brighton don't have a lot of Premier League history, which is why they're near the positive end of this video. 9 games is their longest run without victory, and it's something they've actually done twice. It happened last season as Brighton played the final 9 games without a win, only avoiding relegation because the teams below them were even more rubbish. The Seagulls play Arsenal this weekend, and if they fail to win, they'll set a new longest run without a win, as they're currently 9 without victory following their 0-0 draw with Wolves on Saturday. So they could make unwanted history next time out against the Gunners. 16th Tottenham, 10 games. Speaking of teams who've gone 10 games without a Premier League win, that takes us to North London for the second time and back to the 90s. It was the 93-94 season, and Tottenham couldn't find a win for 10 consecutive matches. They would lose 7 in a row followed by 3 draws, and it was a bad season for Spurs, who also had a run of 9 games without a victory earlier in the season as well. 15th Liverpool, 11 games. They've just gone 44 games unbeaten, divide that by 4 and you've got their longest run without a win. It came back in 2002 under Gerard Houllier, with an unbeaten start to the campaign ending in dramatic fashion. After winning 9 and drawing 3 of their opening 12 games, the Reds then went on a barren 11-game run, which completely derailed their Premier League title challenge. This season the only thing that looks like can derail them is the thing that I'm not allowed to talk about because YouTube might demonetise us. 14th Sheffield United, 12 games. The Blades have a longest run of 12 games without a win, dating back to 1993 when the Premier League was in its infancy. Between August 24th and November 27th, Sheffield United didn't win 1 league game, during a season which they also saw them record their longest unbeaten run of 8 games. 13th Southampton, 12 games. Twice in the Premier League history, Southampton have had 12-game spells without winning, and it was actually back-to-back seasons. The first was in the 17-18 campaign, when the Saints were desperately struggling under Maurizio Pellegrino. He ended the 12-game spell with a win over West Brom, which later sat him for about a month. Saints went 12 without a win the season after as well, with Pellegrino's replacement Mark Hughes also struggling. After 11 games without a win, he was sacked and replaced by Hasenhüttl, who extended the run to 12 before ending it with victory over Arsenal. 12th Everton, 12 games. Back in 1994, it took Everton 13 attempts to win their first Premier League game of the season. It was an awful start for the Toffees, which eventually led to Mike Walker getting the sack. Everton picked up just 4 points from their opening 12 games, a terrible return which still stands as their worst ever run without a win in Premier League history. 11th Chelsea, 12 games. For all of Chelsea's Premier League success, they've once gone 12 games without a win, but that was way back in the Premier League's debut, when Chelsea weren't the force we all know under test today. The run saw Ian Porterfield lose his job, and eventually led to the Blues finishing way down in 11th. Either side of the run were wins against London rivals Tottenham and Arsenal, so at least it wasn't all bad. 10th Burnley, 12 games. In the 2009-10 season, Burnley weren't very good. In all honesty, they never looked like surviving, and they endured their longest run without a Premier League win too, stretching 12 games. If it hadn't been for a 2-1 win over West Ham, that run could actually have been more than 20 games, which is something that has never happened in Premier League history. Fortunately for Burnley, they did win against West Ham, a rare 3 points for the Clarets that season. 9th, Norwich City, 13 games. Just like Burnley, Norwich City's longest run without a win coincides with the season in which they were relegated. The Canaries were back in the top flight in 2004, and after the first 13 games they were up against it. Norwich didn't win a single game, having to wait until November 20th to taste victory for the first time that season, eventually dropping into the Championship after finishing 19th. 8th, Newcastle United, 14 games. Newcastle's worst ever run had nothing to do with relegation, but is our longest yet, and that's because it spanned 2 seasons. The end of the 98-99 campaign with 7 games without victory, then the next season started awfully as well, with another 7 games going by without picking up 3 points. They even lost to rival Sunderland in that time, making a terrible run even worse. But when the run ended, it really ended. In Sir Bobby Robson's first home game in charge, his team would win 8-0, kicking off his tenure in style. 7th, West Ham United, 14 games. In a 38-game season, no clubs won more points than West Ham and still gone down. That's what happened at the Hammers in 2003, dropping out of the Premier League with 42 points on the board. But the big reason they went down was the fact that in the middle of the campaign, they had a 14-game run without picking up a single win. 6th, Wolves, 14 games. Relegation is a real theme now, and that's what happened to Wolves in 2012. While they're flying now, 8 years ago they would go 14 games without a win to send them down to the second tier. It all started with a 5-1 defeat to rivals West Brom, failing to win a single game in their last 14 games of the season, also losing 5-0 to Fulham and Manchester United. Oh, how things have changed at Molineux. 5th, Crystal Palace, 15 games. Back in the late 90s, this was the run that relegated Crystal Palace effectively. Right in the middle of the campaign they couldn't buy a win, going 15 games without scoring more goals than the opposition, which is how you win a game of football, boys and girls. They lost 8 games in a row which saw them drop into the relegation zone, and sadly for the Eagles they would never escape. 4th, Watford, 15 games. Spanning 2 seasons and 2 managers, 2019 was bad for the Hornets. The end of the 2018-19 season saw them fail to win their last 4 games, but it didn't really matter as they were safe already. But after failing to win their first 11 of this season, they ensured they'd be in a relegation battle, one that they're still in at the time of recording. Gracia and Flores were to blame, and now Nigel Pearson is tasked with picking up the pieces and saving Watford's skin. 3rd, Manchester City, 15 games. Yes, Manchester City, one of the best teams in the world of the 3rd longest run in Premier League history without a win, because they never used to be any good before they got money. Their run was almost identical to Watford, ending the 93-94 season with no wins in 4. Then they kicked off the next season with no wins in 11, taking their tally to 15. That season ended in relegation at the second tier for Manchester City, which could be an ominous warning for Watford. 2nd, Leicester City, 16 games. On December 1st, 2001, Leicester beat Aston Villa to lift them out of the relegation zone. 1 week later they lost 4-0 to Southampton and never made it out of the bottom 3 again. The Foxes failed to win any of their next 16 games, and by the time they stopped the rot they were too far adrift and went down to the second tier of English football. With Champions League football now on the horizon, those kind of horrible runs are in Leicester's distant past. And first, Aston Villa, 19 games. Out of the 20 teams currently in the Premier League, no one has gone longer without winning a game. In fact, Villa played half the season's games without winning, as they dropped into the Championship without a fight, despite multiple years of narrow escapes. After winning their opening game against Bournemouth, Villa fans must have been feeling confident. Little did they know it would take another 20 tries to win a second game of the season, going 19 games without victory to ensure they wouldn't be staying up long before the season was over. So that's every Premier League club's longest run without a win in the top flight of English football, not including the First Division, only the Premier League years, because that's when football truly started. Let us know what you think in the comments below. You can follow me on Twitter, I'm at HITC James. And more importantly, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, as we continue on the road to 400,000 subscribers. But until next time, I'll catch you later.